So this is a video reacting to a Fox News report about something that's going on right now, and I think it's important. It's about censorship on places like Facebook, and I'm going to turn the volume down on how well it's disruptive. We're going to Fox News is not going to like this. I'm trying to copyright strike. I'm sure, but I'm going to give like. Button on Palworld itself. Okay, here's the thing. I've been censored a lot on Facebook. They have come after me time and time again whenever I post something, and you know what? I'm kind of sick of it. And before anyone says that's a conspiracy theory, dude, you haven't gone through a Facebook strike. I have. Shut your mouth and watch this shit.
All right, buckle up. We got a Fox News alert moments ago. Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, announcing they are changing their policies to focus on free speech. CEO Mark Zuckerberg saying this.
We're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms.
I am going to pause him right there.
Specifically,
before he gets too far into it. This is a good thing because Facebook policies read like the United States tax code. They need to be simplified and condensed.
we're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes similar to X, starting in the US.
Gonna pause him again. This is another good thing, and I will get into why probably later, but I will say that individual community notes are not typically influenced by corporations, whereas the fact checkers that exist on Facebook are done by people like Snopes, which are a part of the censorship industrial complex, which does exist. Don't believe me? Look it up. You will find several different places where fact-checking by corporate entities has happened. NewsGuard is another example of a corporation responsible for fact-checking. On a more positive note, so are people like Ground News. However, I like the way Ground News does it better because it doesn't tell you what's right or wrong. It just shows you where the leanings are for the particular article that you read. And that's a good tool. I actually wish that Ground News was an integrated part of my internet browsers, like Firefox, Google Chrome, or whatever, versus being a separate app that you have to look things up on. But that's just my opinion. I think it should be a browser extension, effectively.
Wow, big. This is a big deal. Changes include ending its third...
Okay, so I know that we're going to actually shut those off. Replacing third-party fact-check program in the U.S. with community notes model. Good. I don't see anything wrong with that. Lifting restrictions on certain topics. Most likely politics, because that's where most of the restrictions lie, right? Politics and certain sensitive topics. Automated systems will now focus on illegal high-severity violations. Good. That's what they should have been focused on in the first place, moron. Removing reduction of political content. Good. This right here was my biggest complaint about Facebook. Every time I take a meme and put it on Facebook, I get constantly fucking hit with strikes or something similar to it, depending on what I was hit with. This one right here is my biggest fucking issue. Oh, Trump said a thing. Oh, well, I'm going to put it on my Facebook to show my friends and family that, the potential at that point in time, the potential president of the United States said a thing. Oh, well, guess what? Facebook has an issue with what you posted because what Trump said wasn't correct. I don't care if what he said was correct or not. I'm posting that he said a thing. That was my biggest complaint about this whole thing. I don't care if what he said is correct or not. I'm posting what he said. Or I'll post a joke up, right? And it'll be some edgy political joke. And then Meta's AI has a friggin' bird about it because it's a joke. And then I have to go through the process of explaining to the AI that it's a joke. Are you kidding? No, that's stupid. Just remove that entirely. I mean, yeah, certain sensitive jokes, like there's a meme on Twitter where it shows some guy's daughter getting violated on the meme, okay, that's not really something you should be putting up there. Even if it is a political cartoon, because it's not very appropriate. I'm not going to, personally, I'm not going to put that up there because I have friends and family on my Facebook. I also have, get this, clients and customers on my Facebook that come to me for either personal advice on things from relationships to whatever that I don't get paid for, but they're people I consider worth my time. Or I do other services for them. I have people that I work on their vehicles on there. I do other things, and these are people that have connected with me on Facebook. So as a person, I'm going to self-moderate because I don't want to drive those people away, because that's kind of what makes me money and gets things done. My dad's on my Facebook. I don't want him seeing me posting something that obscene. No. So I'm not going to do it. Moving on.
Party fact-checking program and lifting restrictions on topics such as immigration and gender identity.
Thank God. Oh my God. If I have to be fact-checked or censored because I say on Facebook that there's only two genders, I'm sorry, but if that was going to continue, I was going to start looking at another social media platform and just completely shutting down my Facebook. Now, not to include Messenger, though, because I do use Messenger for communications.
Anything more important to talk
I'm
about?
also going to point out the difference between Facebook and Messenger. Messenger does not have censorship unless you do something actively illegal. I could go on there and say whatever racist, homophobic, whatever I want to between two people. And if it's between me and a friend and they don't report me for it, then it's kind of just between us. Big deal. Which, by the way, homophobic means that you're afraid of gay people. Most of the people that I know that are against homosexuality are not actively afraid of these people. They just don't agree with it or don't like it, and therefore they speak out against it. That's not being afraid of it. Being afraid of it would be like you're in the fetal position because a gay person walked in the room. That's not how it works. So, find a better word.
Till now, Meta used automated systems to scan for violations, but found they resulted in too much censorship. So, from now on, they'll focus on tackling illegal and severe violations like terrorism, fraud, to name a few. And joining us right now to name one, a Fox and Friends exclusive, Meta's Chief Global Affairs Officer, Joel Kaplan, joins us live here on the couch. Joel, welcome.
Thanks for being here.
Okay, so I will explain why I don't trust a word coming out of their guest's mouth, and it's very simple. He's in it for the money, just like everyone else at a company is. I'm a game developer of a RPG Maker game. I'm going to tout my game off as best as I can, right? Therefore, if someone finds an issue with it, I'm going to either try to sweep it under, fix the issue, but disguise it as something else before I can fix the issue, and then I'm going to report the issue as being what it actually is. That's just to keep my community that buys my game, calm and cool and not create a panic, right? This guy is going to say whatever it takes to earn money, right? That's just bar none, plain and simple.
Thank
Steve,
you,
great
Joel.
to be here on the couch with Fox and Friends.
It's great to
Glad
have
you're
you.
here.
Duh,
Okay, so
right?
You were announcing these big changes as of 2 minutes ago.
Yeah.
If you're making big changes, does that mean you were doing something wrong before?
Look, this is a great opportunity for us to reset the balance in favor of free expression. As Mark says in that video, what we're doing today is we're getting back to our roots in free expression. There's a number of changes we're making, but if I could, I'd just highlight three.
Yep.
First is, as you heard, we're eliminating the third-party fact-checking system. Well-intentioned at the outset, but there's just been too much political bias in what they choose to fact-check and how, so we're just scrapping it entirely.
What do you mean? You mean you?
The fact checkers.
You set up but they're yours.
Well, so the idea was they're independent fact checkers, but they've just been too biased. And so what we're going to do instead is adopt a system like X has of community notes. So we're just going to rely on our own community of users to provide people more information about what they're seeing. And we think that's going to work
So
great.
give us an example. If we said, if the headline is Donald Trump won the presidency, then anyone in the community can write notes underneath it?
Yeah, great question. So somebody can write a note, and then the way it works is
different people on the platform can sort of vote on that note, and if you get people who usually disagree, who all say, "Yeah, that sounds right," then that note gets put on the post and people see it. X.
Yeah, it's basically a copy paste of how X does their stuff. Pretty much. And by the way, I'm not against them copying this. It's a good thing. It's a good idea to use. More platforms need to be adopting this idea. If you want to have some sort of discourse around things, you need to have both sides of a thing, not just the one side. And when someone posts something, allowing the other side of the conversation to respond to it in a note, or maybe even have an agreed upon note underneath it that says, yes, but here's the context of the thing, that's fine. That's great. We need more of that. For example, I'll use a religious example here. Jesus Christ rose from the dead. Simple statement, right? Community note down below, he was killed by being hung up on a cross and tortured and was betrayed by a disciple for 30 pieces of silver. And it could go into more depth, explaining the situation. Not just, oh, he died and was brought back. And maybe if there's a spiritual leader involved, they could add in the proposed reason that he died on the cross was for your sins, and, yada, 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 right? Whereas right now, it just be, oh, well, we're going to gray out what you posted, and we're going to say why it's partially false because, this information is partially false, label on the friggin' image or what you wrote, and then they're going to dump it off into the whole thing. I actually made a video about this whole thing like months ago, and they're just now finally starting to get to it. It's like, no, X has the better model. I said it in that video back then, and now we're just now finally starting to see it, and it's because of the election. It's literally because of the election.
Been doing it for a while. We think it's working really well, and we're going to adopt that system.
So, and what are the other ones? I know you want to go.
Yeah, thank you. So the second one is about the rules that govern content on our platform. They've just become too restrictive over time about what people can say, including about those kind of sensitive topics that you mentioned that people want to discuss and debate: immigration, trans issues, gender.
I'm gonna check something real quick,
so
just because the
bottom line, if you can say it on
thing
TV,
is annoying me.
you can say it on the floor of Congress. You certainly ought to be able to say it on Facebook and
well, that's not a
Instagram
notification.
without fear of censorship. So we're changing those
Big
rules.
deal.
And then the last thing, if I could, we're also going to change how we enforce the rules, and we're going to make it so that there's way less over enforcement and way fewer mistakes that actually make up the vast majority of censorship that people experience on our platforms. So changes all in service of
Here is where I'm going to kind of strike back on what he said a little bit. Mistakes. Dude, you guys have been doing this crap for years. You've had years to address these problems. Before Biden was even elected, at least 4 years that I can recount off the top. In fact, I'd argue it goes back to even before COVID. You guys have had over almost 6 years to deal with this problem, and people have been complaining about it. And you haven't lifted a friggin' finger until President Trump won and won the popular vote. And now you're trying to backtrack every effed up thing that you've done because your hand was caught in the cookie jar. This is not a matter of, oh, we made a mistake. I would believe that if it happened 6 months ago. But 6 years ago, you're full of crap, my dude. This is CYA, plain and simple.
Bring us back to our values of free expression.
So, Joe, I guess the big question is where the change is coming from. Because, it's hard not to notice there's been a change in Mark Zuckerberg. You've seen him as, respectfully, the nerdy kid, change over to the jiu-jitsu. He's put on some lean muscles. His viewpoint,
which is a good thing. That's one thing I'm going to add on here. Him getting physically in shape is something every single American, heck, every single human being needs to do, including myself. I don't know if you noticed, but with how I'm sitting, I have a little bit of a double chin situation starting here. Bad posture. I'm 80 pounds overweight. These things are things that I need to address. But moving on.
His posting, when he does speak, he's taking a meeting with Trump, taking a different stance on certain things. Are these changes coming from him or from what the public is saying?
There's no question that the things that happen at Meta are coming from Mark, but there's also no question that there has been a change over the last 4 years. We saw a lot of societal and political pressure all in the direction of more content moderation, more censorship, and we've got a real opportunity now. We've got a new administration and a new president coming in who are big defenders of free expression, and that makes a difference. One of the things we've experienced...
I'm going to stop him right there. Actually, I'll let him finish his statement.
Is that when you have a U.S. president and administration that's pushing for censorship, it just makes it open season for other governments around the world that don't even have the protections of the First Amendment to really put pressure on U.S. companies. We're going to work with President Trump to push back on...
Okay. You're Facebook/Meta. You're one of the biggest social media platforms in the entirety of the world. You've had the opportunity to stand up against this stuff the whole time. You refused to do it because it wasn't expedient for you. It did not present you with the opportunities that censorship did. And now that censorship is on its way out, well, now you're just trying to jump on the bandwagon like everyone else needs to do. Because if you're not jumping on that bandwagon of free speech, and you're a social media company, I'm sorry, but you're not going to be a social media company for long. Start looking at investing in other ideas. If you're not willing to jump on that bandwagon. That I will agree with him partially on, but I disagree with him trying to save face. He is literally a PR person at this point.
And that kind of thing around the world.
So, Joel, why now? I know you said it's a change.
And as far as the other countries doing bad things because America is capable of doing bad things, that's actually actively true. America is seen as the golden example of gun ownership, free speech, and a bunch of other things that really, the rest of the world looks to it to gauge how they should behave, right? Like, what's the good and the bad.
But did you feel restricted over the last 4 years? And this is the first time you have, it's in your business interest to express this.
There you go.
For freedom.
He just said the part out loud.
There's no question that there's an opportunity here with a new president taking office, as I said, who really believes in free expression. And that's just going to give us the space to get back to those
They
values,
always had it.
that
Don't
Mark
let him
talked
lie to you about that.
Mark gave a big speech
They
6
had the
years ago at
opportunity to
Georgetown
deal with
about
this
free
years ago, but
expression, about
refused
these
to
values.
because, again, it wasn't in their best
Unfortunately,
interest to do
there's
so.
been a lot of
Now it
political and
is.
societal pressure
And when the
here
pendulum
and
swings
around
back the
world
other
that
way,
pushed away
guess
from those
what? They're going to go
values.
right
We've got a
back
real
to it.
opportunity to reset, get back to them, and really provide a space
How
for
was
free
the Biden
expression.
administration putting pressure on you specifically?
This is the
Were
part
they
that I was
calling you
interested
they
in.
didn't like a post? Were they? What did they say? Take it down?
Yeah, so Mark talked about this in a letter he sent to the House Judiciary Committee a few months ago. That sort of outlined the way in which we got a lot of pressure around COVID in particular to take down more content.
Yeah,
things like
well, we all
humor
knew
and
about that.
satire about the pandemic and about vaccines. We did experience that kind of pressure. The decisions we made ultimately were our own, but there's a real opportunity here with President Trump coming into office with his commitment to free expression. For us to
Again,
get back
he
to
keeps
those
using
values
that word
and really
opportunity
provide
and
space
fails
for
to
people
realize
have the kind
that
of discourse and
him
debate they
being
wanna
a
have.
part
What
of
you
one of the
do with
biggest social
Etsy,
media
and
networks
that
on
is
the planet
unleash independent
left them the
journalism.
opportunity the whole
That's how you
time,
do Michael Shannon.
and anyone who doesn't
Onto
realize that
funds
is
as we
just
go through
not
what you guys
objective.
were actually repressing, shielding, shadow banning over the last few years. Wouldn't that be part of this cleansing process?
So we've had an opportunity to do a lot of that with the House Judiciary Committee and Chairman Jordan over the last few months and years, and he put out a
that's
really
another part of this
thorough-
too. Like, the House of Congress has absolutely been raking these guys over the coals for their shenanigans. I'm trying to avoid cussing too much. It's an effort. It's an ongoing effort. If you watch my Let's Plays, you'll understand where I'm struggling on that. So this guy is saying what he needs to say. There is nothing wrong with what he is doing. He's doing his job, right? And if he does not do his job, he's out on his butt. Right now, his job is to advocate for free speech on Meta or Facebook. Give him about 4.5 years, it'll probably be the opposite, right? As the pendulum swings kind of thing. Unless we keep a current conservative majority for the next, 10 years, which is really difficult because Republicans have a very bad habit of getting their wins and then just kind of sitting on their butt and being lazy. I would know. I voted Republican for quite a while now. I'm in my 30s. I know how the patterns work, right? Pattern recognition.
Report on the experience that we and other companies have had. Honestly, we're pretty focused on the future and the opportunity we have right now.
See, the problem that we have is right now we need the big player that we actually need to come up and say what needs to be said is YouTube and Google. The problem is that they want the censorship, they want the big middle finger to independent content creators who don't share their values. They want to do that. And I'm not talking about the obvious stuff. I'm talking about the more deeply grained political stuff. Like, if you're pro-gun, forget about it. You're in for a headache and a half on YouTube. You can just kind of write it off and say a thing. If you're looking for a pro-gun stance on a Google search, good luck. You're going to have to wade through a bunch of anti-gun BS at the top of the list, okay? It's the way that it is. And that's after you get through the acre of borderline scam sponsored links, right? Some of them are actively scams too, as it turns out later on. So that's a big Google problem that needs to be confronted and dealt with. I just kind of feel like they don't care anymore on that one, and they just kind of let it go and they let it do whatever they want, kind of thing. But that's one of the benefits of being one of the richest search engines on the planet, right? And I know I'm saying this stuff on YouTube's platform, but newsflash, they could take this video down tomorrow. It won't matter. I'll just put it up on Rumble or Twitter, or I would put it up on Twitter if they could get their individual video hosting up and do it right to where I can actually post my content correctly and not, I wish they'd use the same video format. We won't get into the technical weeds on that. All right. I could go put it up on Twitch. I can put it up on Facebook, even though it is critical of Facebook. But it's kind of critical. It's an active critique of what this guy is saying. We'll say that. Back to the video.
The changes we're making today to really open up the
don't
space
want this to take
debate, expression.
too long.
Is the idea to get out of politics totally and focus on just the enterprise of the free market, people debating things, or is it for Mark Zuckerberg to become like an Elon Musk and be influential as well, work with the next administration, or a little bit of both? I don't know.
Well, Mark's always going to be Mark Zuckerberg, but I think there is a real opportunity to work with the new administration, both on free expression, but also on American leadership in technology and innovation. This is something we've seen President Trump is really focused on, making sure that we maintain U.S. competitiveness and leadership on technology, things like AI. Those are obviously super important to our company and our industry, and we'll look forward to working with the new administration to advance those goals.
Right. And Joel, when you talk about content moderation, I think a lot of people
that's
right
just
now are going,
that whole
it's
comment
better
is
if
effectively
they're
just
not taking
filler.
Instructions from the federal government, the Joe Biden administration, saying,
yeah.
hey, this is wrong. Take that down. So people like the idea that they're going to have a say, where you can add the community notes going forward. But ultimately, is this one of the things you're doing as a company to make sure that Meta and the other social media companies aren't regulated by Washington? Because that's the last thing you guys want.
Yeah, I think when it comes to expression, especially in the United States, we got a long tradition of the First Amendment, and we think that the right thing is for individual users to have the ability to decide themselves what to say. Look, there's bad stuff that people do online, like they do in the real world, and we want to make sure we don't have that. So we're still going to be enforcing against terrorism and drug sales and child sexual exploitation, things everybody agrees have no business being on our
What about
platform.
bullying? All the young little girls. I remember Mark. Remember he was on the Hill and he had to he kind enough to turn around and apologize to the families, but all those families have lost their kids from bullying. I have a 9-year-old, so I'm starting to get concerned because eventually when she's in high school or even after, she'll be faced with these situations. So what do you say to those families?
Yeah, well, I'm a parent of 2 teenagers.
Gosh, so you're in it.
Yeah, I'm in it. So, these are issues that I take really seriously, and that a lot of my colleagues who are also parents of Meta, and those who aren't parents, take really seriously. We got to make sure teens are protected online. We launched a few months ago a product called Teen Accounts, that really puts parents in the driver's seat and makes it so that they can see what their kids can see and do online.
Oh,
We put kids in sort of built-in default settings, the most protective settings we have, and then if you're under 16, you can't change those settings on Instagram without your parents' permission. We think that's a really good innovation. It's something
all right.
that
So
will
yes,
fit,
that is a good
it's an
idea.
area of
A
fun.
better
Having
idea.
parents find that setting on the phone before they give it to their child.
Yeah, well, so we'll send notifications
All right,
basically
good, they're
to parents
leaving.
to let them know that this
Yeah,
opportunity exists.
base raid
And the
happened
kid
while I
can't
was watching
sign up
this.
for Facebook or for Instagram without being put into a teen account, and then their parent gets a notice and says, "Hey, your kid's trying to sign up, and if you want to change
Eternal
any
Pyre
settings, you can do it here."
Doomsayers
So, Joel,
decided
if you
to
had
attack my
raised
base
Establish
while I was
Trust,
doing
I mean,
this.
people remember the Zuckerbucks into those key areas in 2020 that were deciding what state, what candidate was going to win what state. And one of the reasons you're trying to do that is, number one, making this announcement here. The other thing is changing your board to let people know maybe by the people that you're hiring, that you asked to join, that their agenda doesn't match maybe the 2020 agenda. What have you done?
Well, we made a big announcement yesterday, put 3 new board members on, great board members, including Dana White, the president and CEO of UFC. Guys,
Okay, I don't know Dana White personally, right? I know of him, and I don't know much about him. I know that President Trump is a big fan of the UFC, loves watching the fights. I get that. But there's a certain element to this that people need to remember about Donald Trump. Donald Trump is not, by his nature, quote unquote, a conservative. He's an old school Democrat lefty who saw his party go nuts during the Obama years and said, no, this isn't right, you need to fix this, and then they refused to fix it. So he stepped up to the plate and tried to fix things in his first 4 years, just to be obstructed at every turn. You know, that this is not the country that we are trying to create mentality, right? And since then, he's noticed, you know, gun rights and free speech and a lot of other things that a lot of conservative values tend to lean more into. Not Republican. Don't confuse conservative with Republican, right? Republican is a political party that is interested in one thing and one thing only: political power. Okay? Same thing with liberals and Democrats. They are not the same thing. The party is a vehicle that likes to try to drive itself. It's like having a vehicle that's out of alignment, right? You're constantly, as a person with the very limited amount of influence that you have, trying to keep the vehicle on the road by having to manually get your hands onto it and say or do a thing to make it stay on the road so you don't end up in a tree somewhere, the tree being tyranny, right? And that's, by the way, on the left, too. You don't want to know some of the crazy shenanigans that they have on the left. But the right has them pretty bad, too. This is an issue that's happened over the course of years, right? Years and years. Here is my big issue with what's going on here. Fox News is not a branch of government, right? It is a corporation that is influenced by certain governmental interests and donors, right? Which means that they have an objective to have people on. It's a business objective. It's not a, oh, well, if you don't do this thing, we're going to put you in jail. No, it's a, okay, if we put these people on, they are worth X amount of money, right? They're worth X amount of viewership. Now, one of the things that Fox has done is they've taken to putting stuff on YouTube, which I think is smart. By the way, I also think that they should put their stuff on Twitch as a live stream, because I think that having a presence on Twitch for all different news organizations is probably about the smartest thing you can do. I'm not saying that you need to have a streamer on there, blah, blah, blah. No, just put your stuff yourself on there as a channel. Get your live stuff out, put it on Rumble, put it on Twitch, put it on YouTube. You're a news organization, and those are the ways that you reach people nowadays. And that's just the ecosystem that we all exist in, right? take part in the ecosystem or watch your business collapse effectively. That's more or less, right, the gist of it. Now, how I disagree with a lot of what I'm seeing on here is because, number one, I know the first thing that's going to happen the second I try to publish this onto YouTube is I'm going to see a copyright issue, okay, that I'm going to have to, argue with, despite the fact that I'm actually doing a React video and it is actively covered under fair use content here in the United States.
Legend, incredible businessman, incredible
Now,
entrepreneur.
Dana White, and how this relates back to him, is also a businessman who has certain ideological standpoints. I don't necessarily actually know what they are, but he is going on to the board of Facebook. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. I don't know. And it's kind of like, I posted up the gif of The Rock doing the eyebrow thing because it's kind of a it's I'm worried on Facebook's part that this is just pandering to people who want free speech and not actively actually giving us free speech. We're just going to see more of the same in a different form, right? That's effectively what I'm concerned with.
Marketing genius, super excited to have him, a couple other great board members with real deep business experience that we put on the board, perspectives that we want to make sure are getting fed into the process.
So, is this? Can you tell
I
the
haven't actually
audience in
seen
the
this.
world that this is not a temporary stance? And what I mean by that is
This is
just
what I want to
because
hear. I want to hear
we
his
got Donald
response to
Trump in
this.
there for 4 years. Are you guys going to continue this after his presidency, or is this just a temporary thing for the moment?
This is an opportunity for us to get back to the
No.
values that Mark founded.
No. And here's my thing about why that's a no. This guy has said the word opportunity like umpteen million times, and it's starting to look like it's his poker tell. He picks a word to obsess over, right? It's like I just said, the second this stuff becomes financially inconvenient for them, they're going to shift back on it. That's what that tells me.
Company on. This runs deep for Mark. It's a great opportunity.
If it ran so deep for Mark Zuckerberg, why for the last 6 years has he allowed the government to effectively influence censorship on his own platform that he has final say over? This guy is outright lying out both sides of his mouth at this point.
To rebalance and to get back to free expression.
When you say rebalance, historically, the big tech companies and social
And actually, I do have an active answer for that. It's because they got their hand caught in the cookie jar. Hopefully, the cookie jar had some serious teeth to it, and maybe they lost a hand in the process, and they learned from it, right? That's the hope. But this guy is being absolutely disingenuous with this. You know for a fact that the second we get another administration in that says, yeah, we want you to crack down on stuff online, they're going to go right back to it. That's what that shows.
media companies have leaned to the left. You know that. Is this dragging it closer to the center? I mean, with Dana White, obviously a Trump ally, as part of the board, is the company becoming more central rather than leaning to one side or the other?
I think the way to look at it is we're a platform for all people and all ideas.
No, you aren't, because if you were, you wouldn't have engaged in the same rhetoric and behavior for the last 6 years plus. Okay? This is, again, more CYA. Cover your A, right? That's all this is. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to stop interrupting this because I want it over with. There's only like 3 minutes left.
But some people don't feel that certain, and haven't felt historically, that certain social media companies were hospitable to their points of view.
No question. And that's what I meant by rebalance. We want to make sure that they understand that their views are welcome and that we're providing.
Which is a new step for them because for the previous 6 years, maybe even longer, they have been absolutely against anyone that doesn't fit their ideas. So, and there are numerous examples of it. I could go on to several people who wanted to produce their content onto Facebook, but couldn't because it didn't fit their narrative. which was a very left-leaning narrative.
A space for them to come onto our platform.
And this guy's, by the way, the guy next to the guy who's talking right now, changing his posture is a good tell of, like, outright, he knows this guy's full of shit. Watch your language. Full of bologna turkey sausage, right? Because he's sitting there, the elbow is a big tell, right? Relaxing because you know the guy's lying, he's bought off to you, you can't trust a word that he's saying here. It's kind of an absolute tell. Now, the other three are kind of more pensive because they're trying not to influence it. This guy doesn't give two flying you-know-whats. At this point, he knows this guy is full of crap. He knows that 4, maybe 6 years down the road, we'll be right back in this same censorship soup, right? That's exactly where this guy's head's at. And by the way, if you've been actually paying attention to what this guy's saying and how he's saying it, you know it is.
Engage, express themselves, engage in the important issues of the day, or not in the important issues of the day, and just whatever it is they want to talk about and share. And so we need to make sure they feel welcome. We need to make sure we rebuild trust.
Mr. Bobbing head over here. That's a poker tell.
Trust. And that's a big part of what we're doing today.
So also, there's something else that could be in front of the Supreme Court, and that's future of TikTok, China control. So you're an American company, you decide to make this announcement. How does this relate to what TikTok could possibly do?
So look, we like competition. We think it makes us better. I know there.
You know, I had a used car salesman try to sell me a Ford Taurus at one point that turned out to be a lemon, and you know what? The good old "we like competition" line. Here we go. Okay. At this point, this is kind of like a legal disclaimer, right? They have to say that. If they say that we want dominance in the social media, whatever, then they have to deal with potential monopoly issues, right? Because they just openly said it. This is so blatantly just business speak for CYA.
Concerns that Congress has expressed, and that the president and Congress and the courts are working through with TikTok. We're going to stay focused on what we're doing and how we make our platform as open and welcoming a place as possible.
In other words, he doesn't want to opine on what another platform should or should not be doing, because Tencent is effectively being branded as a military corporation of China by the United States and is effectively going to be fucking yoinked. Which, by the way, this has gaming implications that I'll get into when we're done covering this.
For all
You think it
points
should
of
be
view.
banned?
Well, that's something I'm going to leave to the president and the courts and Congress. We're focused, again, we're focused on what we can do to make our platforms the best they can
If
be.
Elon Musk didn't buy X and expose what he exposed and put community notes like this, do you think we'd be in it? What did he, in buying this and doing what he did, do for the introspection that Facebook is showing?
I'm going to give the real answer to the question, and then I'm going to let him give his answer to the question. Elon Musk contributed massively just by creating the community note system and implementing it on X. If it wasn't for that, we wouldn't even be here today having these conversations. This video would be completely different. It'd probably be more of me bellyaching about how the censorship on Facebook is unbearable, to be honest. Which I've already done one of those, and I don't want to do another one, right? I'm actually... This whole thing, by the way, even with all this guy's covering his backside, covering the company's butt, you know, all that stuff aside, this is a good thing. Don't misunderstand me. I'm just saying that they're doing it for business reasons. This is not some fundamental thing that they believe. If it was, we would have never have had censorship issues in the past. Barring some sort of... Actually, even with some sort of federal dirt that was on Mark himself or whatever, these issues would have never entered the platform. This is literally just a business perspective, which can change at the drop of a hat. The second this becomes unpopular or becomes the next administration could be as far left as, you know, changing the White House from the White House to the Rainbow House kind of thing, like paint job and all, right? The second that becomes a thing, they'll be jumping on board with that too. Do not misunderstand this as being some sort of genuine thing. It's not.
Right.
I think Elon's played an incredibly important role in moving the debate and getting people refocused on free expression, and that's been really constructive and productive.
Okay.
And we're just glad that we've got the opportunity now to make these kind of changes and to get back to our roots in free expression.
So you can tell that that's not the answer that he wants to say. What he actually probably wants to say is the truth, which would be this is a business decision because we are losing people left and right. People don't want anything to do with us, and we're actively getting dragged through the mud on places like Twitter. By the way, by people like me. Here's my reaction to his answer. He used that magical word, opportunities, again. He uses it more than Kamala Harris did during the whole presidential election we just had. In an interview, which I didn't think was possible. Here's the thing. That word, again, is a tell. He's making stuff up to fill for time. He could probably condense this whole interview from a 15-minute interview down to about a 10-minute one. It's all fluff and nonsense. I will simplify it for you. We are doing a thing because we have a popular vote mandate for a president, and you can sit here and try to justify, oh, it's not a popular vote mandate. Dude, look at the numbers and actually read them the way that they're supposed to be read. Not your, oh, well, it's different groups voting for different reasons. Yeah, but he still got the popular vote, and he still won the electoral vote with landslide margins, by the way, of 312. So, shut up. You're coping. Go cope somewhere else. Cope and justify in a corner somewhere, right? This stuff is just Facebook doing what Facebook has to do to try to get back into the business of being a business. Plain and simple. You can tell by how this guy talks. It's just all business fluff to basically shield himself and Facebook from actually facing any legitimate criticism, which, by the way, Fox News probably never would have brought to begin with.
Maybe all social media companies can learn a lot from this because y'all were the original. You know, Mark was one of the originals at least, and so y'all have had to see all the changes and what works and what doesn't work and what Americans really want. So thank you for your honesty. Thank you for doing this
Just
for
one exit
children and all the customers.
Australia has banned social media up until you're 16 years old. How do you feel about that?
We think the right way to do it is to trust parents. That's what we're doing with the teen accounts that I mentioned. And you know, obviously we've got to work with governments and follow the laws that they pass. But I think there's a better way, and that's to put parents in charge. They know what's best for their teens and their kids.
This is like the best thing that this guy could have done in this interview. The guy who asked this question, I can never remember his name. I'm terrible at names. But that put this guy on his heels. Now you're seeing probably one of the very few genuine personal reactions of this whole interview.
And that's what we're trying to do.
What's your biggest customer? What age group?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, we've got 3.2 billion people using our services, so we really have people across all ages. And we want to make sure we're serving them all and letting them express themselves in a way, especially with teens, where they're still kept safe.
Did you talk to David Sachs about this, who's going to be coming in as the AI?
Yeah,
AI czar?
we've talked to David. We're really excited about that post. We think he's going to do great things. He really understands the industry. He really understands crypto and AI, and we can't wait to start working with him.
Well, Joel, thank you very much for stopping by the couch and making the big announcement today.
Hopefully you'll come back
Thank
as
you.
well.
Absolutely. Thank you all for having me.
A fair and balanced social media world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank
Nice
you.
to meet you.
I'm Steve.
Okay, I'm not going to play the rest of this because this is their stuff. I will do it for them, actually. I'm not a big fan of Fox News personally, but this was a good interview. I'm going to leave the link to the video in the description. Go back and watch it for yourself without my interjection and see what you think. Closing thoughts on this interview. Personally, this guy seemed like he was doing the business thing, which was cover your own butt for this administration the second it's out, and see what happens after he's out, right? This is not ever going to be a permanent thing. This guy came off as disingenuous, like disingenuous throughout most of the interview. The only thing that came off as genuine was the one time that he answered a question without using the word opportunities. I wouldn't trust most of what this guy has to say, but at least as far as like the justifications and whether this is a permanent thing or not. And here's why. Facebook Meta is a business first and foremost. They are riding the free speech dragon because it's going to get them business. That's it. The second that it becomes a problem for them, out the window. That could be 4 years from now. That could be 8 years from now. It could not have anything to do with the political parties or elections at all. Which, by the way, if they were smart, they'd remove their political leanings from the platform in general and just use community notes to let the community kind of monitor and guide itself on a lot of the, for example, Facebook. This is just an example. COVID. Alright. So on Twitter, and I will pull up Twitter because Twitter is the best place for doing this stuff. We have these nice little things, which was covered in the thing. Now there's one that's a more comedic version called Community Notes Violating People, which is kind of funny. But this is a good example. Amy Klobuchar gets community noted. This is about January 6th, not COVID, but yeah. You know, I can't actually read the community note because of YouTube. So used to saying Facebook, right? Because of YouTube guidelines. Amy Klobuchar gets nailed for lying about officers getting deleted during January 6th. We'll say that. The community note reads what it reads, right? You can pause the video and read it. So this is what Facebook is looking to do versus what Facebook had in the past, which I could dig through my videos and find it, but they'll gray out your video and say this video contains false content or whatever, right? Which, by the way, your video probably doesn't, okay? But what it'll say is, while the election certification was interrupted, the amount of violence was limited, police officers were injured, blah blah blah. But no, the one person that was killed was an unarmed Air Force officer by the name of Ashley Babbitt. This did not hang democracy in the balance. And by the way, I'm doing this as if I was fact-checking a Facebook fact-check and what it would read like if you did one on Facebook and you got fact-checked by one of their independent fact-checkers, quote-unquote, air quotes. Not so independent as it turns out. When you pay someone to do a thing and you tell them to do whatever, just make sure it gets done, you get what you get, right? And then when you get office memos tossed around about the federal government wanting you to censor certain types of speech, well, then anything that's critical of the federal government instantly gets, not community noted, but rather fact-checked by your independent fact-checker. Not so independent when you have to issue them a paycheck. Let's see, continuing on with the fact check. I knew we had to do our duty and complete the count, and in nearly hours of January 7th, we did. Okay, so this person is obviously, and I know who Amy Klobuchar is, she has a flair for lying and dramatics, right? You can see it in just about everything she does politically. There's not a single pro-gun talking point that she hasn't lied about. She's very anti-gun. She'll bring up false statistics or badly manipulated statistics to support her points. She's not a very good person. Alright, just outright gonna say it. And the community context in this case read that no officers were killed. The medical examiner found Sicknick passed away of natural causes, which means a disease alone causes, insert D word here. if D-word is hastened by an injury or manner of death is not considered natural. 4 other officers hit the self-delete button days to months later. So whatever happened that caused them to do that, whether it was related to the event on January 6th or not, effectively what that means is does not matter. It was their own choice to do it. It was not done by the hand of any one person on J6. And you can sit there and try to argue that point all you want. You just make yourself look like a moron. But that's not the point of what I'm trying to bring up here. This is better than getting... and yes, my screen for doing this stuff is over there. This is better than doing the Facebook method of graying out the information and blatantly labeling it as either partially false or false information. This gives readers context and calls out the BS in the post. This is why community notes is far superior to fact checking, right? It's kind of obvious. Because, by the way, even if the community note agreed with it, it could be adding context to it. Whereas, the fact check system on Facebook never does. Not once does it ever add context to anything. It just will tell you, oh, it's false information. Which, by the way, at this point, and the other reason this guy is saying the stuff that he's doing and why Meta is doing the thing that they're doing is because a lot of people kind of treat the Facebook fact check system as a joke at this point. And some people, myself included, find fact checking to be blatantly false. So, generally speaking, whenever Facebook fact checks something, it's generally accepted that whatever they're trying to fact check is just accepted as truth because they can't be impartial about their fact checks, and most of their fact checks have come up to be false in the first place. So, a lot of people, again, myself included, have just taken it as, oh, hey, look at that, I must be onto something because, Facebook fact checked me, right? Whereas with a community note, it's like, okay, well, there's basically an independent committee that's not paid by anyone. They found what I said to be offensive and just outright wrong, and they're correcting me on my points. Okay, well, I'm going to leave... Number one, I'm not going to take down a post that I find is wrong, unless I find it wrong before the fact checker does, right? If a fact checker finds it wrong, then I'm going to leave it up, right? Because I feel like my being wrong and knowing about it is going to be less informative to anyone who reads my post and the community note below it, explaining where I'm wrong, because they're going to do a better job because they're going to nitpick everything that I got wrong, right? Whereas a fact checker is just going to try to issue some blank statement, which is oftentimes just outright incorrect. Plain and simple, like, oh, well, this is factually false because the truck that he drove wasn't a Ford when he ran over all those people. It was a Chevy. Okay, but he still ran over those people with a truck, and the brand shouldn't matter. You're stupid, right? That's kind of one of those things that Tim Pool talks about how they try to use facts to twist narratives into saying someone is lying about something when they just got one small detail wrong. That really doesn't matter whether it was a Ford or a Chevy in the first place. That's not the big news. The big news is that there are people who have passed away at the hands of another human being using a vehicle. That's the kind of stuff that made Facebook fact checks really just irrelevant in general. But that's going to do it. Again, if you like the content, hit the like and subscribe button. Go watch this interview from Fox News. I'm not going to promote them as a company because, again, I don't agree with them. I'm not subscribed to them. But if you like what they do, go sub to them. That's kind of your business, right? But I'm not going to spend too much more time on this topic because it's just kind of dumb. But effectively, this is a win. Take the win where you can get it. It's like I said to my grandmother beforehand, we need all hands on deck, and we need the big guns on deck, and Facebook and Meta are the big guns. So, if they're willing to work for us and actually work and not jam again, or malfunction in some way, then great. If they're actually on board moving forward, that's grand, but don't get your hopes up. That's more the principle of the video. Don't get your hopes up. This is pure business. just about the time it's not in their business interest to not to the second free speech becomes not a professionally advantageous business decision to make, they'll throw it right under the bus again. Just understand that, but take the win. Okay, take the win, but take a huge old bag of salt with you when you take it. Okay, that's all I'm saying, and have it ready to kill the slug. But anyway, hopefully everyone has a lovely day, and I will see you in the next one.